We are live. Yay. So hopefully I'm not going to sort of go into it too quickly, Paul, because let's just let people sort of find their way to this live session. And hopefully we'll also be able to let us know in the comments that they are here and joining us before I introduce you, because I wouldn't want people to miss your introduction, Paul, particularly those that may not necessarily at the moment follow you, although hopefully everybody that is joining us does know who you are, but just to make sure. So if you are with us right now, would you kindly just pop a little hello in the comments, just to let us know that that you're here with us, and also to let us know that you can see us and hear us. Because yeah, neither of us, Paul, are sort of very experienced with doing LinkedIn Lives, are we?
No, this is my first, Jackie.
So I know that hubby is with us, so hopefully my husband at least is going to let us know in the comments that he can see us and hear us, along with anybody else that's with us at the moment. So anyway, before we get started, Paul, while hopefully we've got some people joining us, the Friday playlist. So just remind everybody what your song choices were, if you can remember this morning.
It's a really tough one, Jackie. You make it really hard with these playlists. I mean, look, there's some ropey stuff on there as well, but there's some absolute classics this week. I love The Jam. Always have done. So Town Called Malice was always going to be in there. I love Dex's, particularly that track, because it's always a dance track. There is so much. Just probably not quite tight fit. That's probably not quite my thing. but
yeah,
brilliant.
I mean, I'm with you. The Jam, I didn't appreciate so much in my younger days. I do appreciate their music a lot more now. I've aged and matured, and I'm wiser. Although I'm not sure if Abby would agree with the wiser bit.
And I think Paul Weller on his own is good too. So for me, it's like, oh, I can follow that all the way through. But a great list. And you know, anyone who's not following Jackie on well every day, but the Friday playlist is just great.
Oh, thank you very much for that, Paul. So I know we've got at least one person watching us live, because Pete, my lovely husband, has just popped a comment to say, yes, he's here with us. So I'm guessing he can hear us. So for those that are followed and may not know who I am, as obviously the screen says, my name's Jackie, and I'm very passionate in helping companies to deliver service excellence. And I'm really excited to introduce you to my first guest on my 2024 LinkedIn Lives, which is my wonderful connection. We've been following each other for quite some time, haven't we, Paul? But I'm going to hand over to you just to introduce yourself to everybody that's either watching live or watching the recording.
Well, Jackie, first I've got to thank you for having me on. It's so much fun. I'm really looking forward to it. For those that don't know me, I'm also passionate. I'm a passionate believer in the potential, the core potential in people. My every day is focused on seeing that release of core potential. I work with a colleague of mine, Mark Caulfield, in DNA, and we just love this. We love to see that. Now we have a very specific approach to doing this unlocking of core potential. And that is, everything we do is underpinned by neuroscience. So while we're both very experienced coaches, consultants in the world of people development, in the world of mental health and well-being, we also believe it's really important to get to the heart of matter quickly, to understand what a client really needs and wants, and then to be able to measure the progress from where they are now to where they want to be. That's crucial to our business, because we believe it's crucial to our clients, so that they can see where the progress is being made. They can understand that we've really got to the heart of matter quickly. So just like you, I'm passionate about releasing core potential in people.
Oh, thank you ever so much, Paul. And that's why I was so excited to get you on as my first guest, because as I say, I love reading your posts. You know, and certainly from the sort of the DNA perspective, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more as we're going through this this session today. But Just before we get started, we've got the lovely Damien Miller, who has got some questionable taste in music. Only joking, Damien. I know you love to tell us both that that you may be just a little bit younger than we are. So let's get started then, Paul, in terms of the service excellence that we're both really passionate about. So in your opinion, where do you think service excellence begins within a business?
Well, like we've discussed, Jackie, I'm going to come at this from a behavioral perspective. So not necessarily a technical perspective on customer service excellence, but really what drives people to do what they do. And I could easily say to you, or the cop-out would be, it starts at the top, because it really does. But let me perhaps expand on that a little bit from a behavior perspective. Excuse me. Now, one of the key things for me in any leadership role is to model what your expectation is of people within your organization. And that's very, very pertinent and relevant to any customer service excellence. If you have a leadership that models that behavior, that models that attitude, that models that reason why, and they model that with their people, they model that with their amazing team of customer services people, I think it's critical that they see how other people behave in the role of responsibility. And that's what every customer services person has. They have a responsibility to the person at the other end of the phone, right? So when it comes to leadership have a responsibility to the people they lead, the people that they manage. And to give maybe a little bit of context there, if you imagine 2,000 years ago, and I know you can't, Jackie, because like you're not that old, right? If you imagine 2,000 years ago, there were two ways that people learned. One was what the Romans and the Greeks brought, which is this auditorium approach. You stood up at the front and you shared knowledge in a very one-way approach. And the other part of that, this is more the Middle East approach, which is an immersive experience. If you made baskets, then your children would learn to make baskets from you, right? It's an immersive experience. And research has shown that immersion, the ability to learn as on the job, the ability to understand more, the ability to be part of something is way more powerful than this one-way exchange of information or education. So I'm a firm believer that if you immerse leadership in the expectation, in the understanding and the demonstration of how they want their team to interact with external people to the business, you're going to establish a really firm foundation that sees people behave in a way that they have learned through immersion, through understanding. And we all do, by the way. We all yearn to learn. We all yearn to replicate something that we see as good and right. So it's a long answer to your question, Jackie, but it does start at the top without exception. But there's always a but. And the but is it really needs to be modeled from the top. That's how people really learn and stay sustained in that level of service and that level of understanding. So in answer to your question, it's at the top and it really does need to be modeled by the people from the top.
Absolutely agree with you there, Paul. And I'll just give just a very small example of I think for all levels of managers to be mindful of in terms of leading by example. You know, my background, I worked for 27 years in different contact center environments. And one of the key, I guess, rules, if you like, or expectations when you are working in a busy contact center environment is you don't sort of use your mobile phone. That's sort of, you know, put away in your bag, in your drawer, etc. That you don't take calls, of course, unless it's an absolute emergency, and then you check with your manager. But I lost count of the number of times I would then see managers, particularly senior managers, walking around actually on their phone having conversations. Now, yes, some of those you could hear were business conversations, but they weren't all. And so, you know, that to me, that's something when you talk about leading by example, you know, and yes, I agree with you completely in terms of we learn immersively. And I know when I first started, my career as an advisor, I really learned from my peers as well as senior managers, in terms of the people that had really great skills. I'd listen, I'd watch, I'd pick up the tips and techniques from those people. But equally, as I say, you're also thinking, hang on a second, if I can see the sense behind why I'm not allowed to do X, Y, or Z, but then I don't expect to see anybody in an organization, whether that's senior managers or anybody else in their role, not following that same lead and example. And so that's just a small example, but immediately popped to mind, which tells you how often I actually saw that behavior. But let's drill down into specifics, Paul. So are there some specific actions that senior leaders can take to help teams to have that immersive experience and to deliver service excellence?
I think it's important that there's a very hands-on approach. Now, I'm going to qualify that, because a lot of people go, well, hang on, Paul, you can't be hands-on to like 500 people. There is, when I talk about hands-on, I talk about that idea of modeling. So in other words, how they communicate. Communication, right? Fundamentally, communication is the be-all and end-all in almost any human development process. It's no different here. So when I talk about modeling, I think communication is really, really key. How you communicate, when you communicate. You see, the key in this is the expectation that we take, if we're on the front line, if we're sitting there in the amazing call centers that we have, if you're on the front line, you don't want to have to sit there and think, now what was that point that was made in the PowerPoint chart that we did? And so what you want to do is, now I remember how Jackie dealt with this. And it was very, very, it was very hands-on from a communication perspective. So it's not necessarily, yes, you can walk around the call center and watch people and help and interact. Of course you can, but that'll become a full-time job, right? But if you learn very specifically how to communicate effectively, and part of that communication is why you do what you do, right? Because we all respond to why. The what and how, that's fine, but the why is really important when it comes to culture. So when we communicate under the context of why, communicate really clearly. So there's a temptation in communication is on social media, and I fall foul of this often, and that is we overcomplicate that, right? Keep communication really clear, simple language that resonates with people because it touches their why. Why are they there? But keep it really simple and clear so that they can consume that a lot on rapidly and without necessarily thinking much about it. They need to be able to consume it well, and they need to be able to see context well. And that is where clear communication comes in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'm a huge fan of a gentleman I'm sure many people are familiar with, is Simon Sinek, and his sort of philosophy on start with the why. And that talks about many different ways in which and aspects of the importance of starting with a why, but particularly in terms of communication. And I talk about this often in my training sessions when I'm delivering courses around communication. Is often we spend so much time preparing and preparation and thought in the what, as you say, and the how. So this is what you need to do. This is how you need to do it. But unless people hear the why at the start, the questions are already there in their mind. So they're not paying full attention to the what and the how, because they're thinking, well, but why? Why is this important? Why does this matter? The question of why is there in their minds. Even if they don't outwardly say it, they're thinking it. And the last thing we want is people, not paying full attention because they're trying to work out the why for themselves. And so for me, that's another key reason why the why is important. Let's get the why out there first so that people understand it. They're then ready to focus on the what and the how.
Yes, 100%.
So in terms of helping teams with their mindset in terms of delivering service excellence, how important do you think it is to, I guess, encourage and to inspire and motivate the team to have the right mindset? How important do you think that is in the whole scheme of delivering service excellence?
Well, in life in general, mindset is critical. You know, I often talk about mindset as the fundamental foundation for any business owner or any leader, right? Your mindset will determine the actions you take or don't take. But here's the thing, when it comes to teams, when it comes to understanding how teams tend to think, there is a really critical factor in that. And it's summarized really well by a great researcher of psychology. She's an author called Brené Brown. She wrote a book called Daring Greatly, and it's about leadership. And she says there's this innate desire to be part of something more than we are, right? And that's a sense of belonging to something more than just who we are. You know, we often hear the phrase that we're more than the sum of our parts. And I think for teams, they need to feel they belong. Teams need to understand at a fundamental level that belonging to something bigger than they are is something that they really want to get hold of. And I've got a great example, Jackie, a very good friend of mine. He loves his job. He works in a warehouse. He loves it. And if you have a conversation with him, about the business, about the company that works for, a huge company, he will simply address that as our company, or we, or we've done this, and our team have achieved that. He always talks about it in a way that he belongs to that, right? And I think this is critical when it comes to a team mindset. Create that sense of belonging. Make it more than just a role. And let me balance that, because people say, oh, Paul, some of these people just turn up and do their job. I understand that. But we're talking about innate human behavior here. And innate human behavior says we want to belong to something more than we are. Yes. And so when it comes to mindset, Jackie, I think it's really important in teams, but particularly in customer service teams, is understand that they're a team, that they belong together, that this is something they share. Because guess what happens? They've got each other's back. They support one another. They are there for one another. They don't simply go, it's not my responsibility, go and talk to someone else. So in terms of human behavior, create that sense of belonging in a team. It's a mindset context for sure. But once you understand the sense of belonging isn't necessarily about the team name or the role they have. It's about belonging. We are born with this desire to know what we're about. What is our self-worth? Why are we here? And that sense of belonging is a big part of that. So when I talk to companies about teams and how to get them to become cohesive and collaborative, it begins with that sense of belonging. Create that as a foundation in a mindset, and you will be amazed how much more you can achieve.
Absolutely, Paul, and I'm sure you will know that I sort of continually bang that drum about the importance of every single person, and I refer to it, a jigsaw puzzle. We've probably all got to that place where we've done a jigsaw puzzle, or we're getting towards the end, and you probably realize before you get to the last piece that you've got a piece missing. Yeah. And how frustrating that is. But again, the link between a customer being frustrated because there's a missing piece in that organization, and that might not be the person that's actually speaking to the customer, the frontline staff. That might be a customer service staff member saying, well, I can't give you an update, I'm not quite sure because I'm still waiting on that particular person or that particular team. And again, I think that sense of purpose is understanding for everybody in an organization. And I love the example you said about that warehouse worker in terms of using the we, because that really does sort of confirm, doesn't it, that person gets a sense of the purpose and the bigger picture. But, for me, it's about everybody understanding that part they play in what the organization is trying to achieve. What's the company's purpose? And I don't mean about making profits and money. That's that's an outcome, that's a result. But why does that company exist? But then every single person in an organization understanding that purpose, but also understanding the vital part that they play, and I've lost count to the number of times in a training course, I've asked people to introduce themselves and they've said something like, oh, well, I'm just an admin person, or I'm just a customer service team member. And immediately I say, right, let's start that again and take the just away.
Yeah.
because that's telling me that you're thinking that's a minor role. It doesn't matter as much
Yeah.
as the senior manager in a business. So yeah, and it's not easy to achieve, but
It's
the great work that you're doing, Paul, is a big part of that, isn't it?
yeah, it's not easy to achieve and I get that, and we work very hard to enable leaders to do this, but I think there is a key factor, and you've just given an example, and it certainly resonates with me, and that is, if you're a leader and want to understand where your team are at, go and have a conversation and listen to what they say. Their language will tell you where they're at. A big part of what we do is dig below the surface with some clever little neurotech stuff to get to how people truly feel. And language is a reflection of how they feel. So if you have people who sit there and go, well, I'm just this, or you need to go and talk to the admin people, then you don't have that cohesion as a team. It's seen as disparate, separate. Whereas if you start hearing the words, we do this, and we're part of that, and our company, I find it fascinating listening to language, because if an employee considers it their company, oh, you're really moving mountains with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, a big part of what you do, as I say, is about helping, in terms of people, their mindset, their motivation, etc. And I'm happy for you to talk more about your partnership and the DNA work that you do, Paul, but particularly around how I guess within an organization, leaders can help to motivate their staff, particularly the staff that are at that coal face, that they're dealing with customers, they're dealing with difficult conversations. I've been there, done it. I know anybody that says working in customer service is easy has never done it.
Yeah.
You're dealing with emotions, people's, customers' emotions, your emotions, frustrations, all of that can take its toll. So how can leaders, and how can you help leaders to keep staff motivated and inspired to keep going and to deliver a great service?
The real answer for me, having for years of working in this environment, the real answer for me is swap vision with mission. And what I mean by that is we all need to understand what the vision is for the company, any company, right? Whether you've got customer experience people or not, you need to understand what the vision is for the company. But here's the challenge. On that day-to-day basis, vision's great, right? It motivates, it gives us insight. On the day-to-day, we need to have something a bit more tangible or a bit more relatable to really keep us motivated, to really bring back perspective, right? We all know what that's like to have those difficult conversations, more so if you're in a customer services team, more so. I understand that completely myself. But we all have the challenges around motivation on a day-to-day. So if we focus on the mission, and the mission is how we get there, right? If our vision is to be second to none when it comes to customer satisfaction, then what's our mission to achieve that? How are we going to do that? Earlier we were discussing, Jackie, and you're going, look, the Simon Sinek approach is very much start with the why. There's your vision, right? But then it has to come on to how and what. And it's the how and what that keeps people motivated on the day-to-day, because what they do is they see that as a tangible thing, right? The how might be to ensure that our clients or our customers only have to have one call to feel like their problem's owned, right? Here's our mission. These are our 10 things that define our mission. And I think mission is critical here, more so than vision, because on a day-to-day, we can't afford to lose sight of how and what. The why can be put up on a wall and everyone can see it. And it's marvelous to think that we want to be the number one technology provider with the first-rate customer excellence. That's fantastic. But when I'm sitting there and I've had a difficult call, or I'm facing the fact that, for the last 3 calls, I've not been able to resolve the issue my customers have, I need to remember my mission. My mission needs to be really clear. My mission is how and what we do to achieve the outcome we're trying to do, or to get there, the vision that we're trying to maintain. So when it comes to mindset and motivation, Jackie, a well-worded and structured mission statement or list, however you want to do that, is critical, because that's the day-to-day.
Absolutely. And where do you think company values fit into that mission?
The company values, it is inherently in the mission. It's how do I explain that? The mission must sit on top of values, right? You can't have a mission and not understand what you stand for. So values are fundamental. In fact, values underpin everything, because you need to understand what you stand for to then to be able to act out the what and how, right? So values are not, don't, for me, this is my opinion, values don't sit alongside mission, they underpin mission. And that's really, really important, because if your mission is defined in a very step-by-step way, is defined as a set of actions or mindsets, it has to be underpinned. You can't simply sit there and go, well, we want to offer, we want to try and achieve a resolution in one call. Right? I'm sort of making that up, but let's call that a part of your mission. You can only understand that context when it sits on a value. If your value is customer services excellence, then you can understand where that fits. If it doesn't sit on a value, you don't know where it fits. So what are the boundaries, right? The idea that boundaries are not restrictive. Boundaries give us a scope of work. We know where we sit. We understand where we sit within boundaries. But values sit at the bottom. Goes, I now understand my meaning behind what I do, my mission. That's the critical part.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, an ongoing challenge, I think, in my experience for companies, is helping every single person in lots of different roles understand how they bring those values to life. What does that value mean in the context of their role, in terms of the what and the how? What behaviors, and how do I demonstrate those behaviors? And again, it's a common conversation I have. I've yet to find any group of employees that I've gone in to deliver training. I said, what are your company values? And they've all been able to tell me immediately, without really thinking, I think one of them is this and one of them is that. And then when I sort of take the conversation beyond, and what does that value mean to you in the context of your role? How do you live and breathe it and demonstrate it every day? There's a lot more thought and discussion that goes in at that point. But again, every company has certainly a vision. Every company, most companies, I would say, have a mission. Every company has values, but does that necessarily mean that everybody understands that mission and values in terms of their role and the part they play? There's the question.
That's exactly it. Mission is only valid when it's within context. So for and we come back, and I keep mentioning this because it's easy to say that some of these roles are just not big enough to really take on the idea of identity, but they all do, right? We all have a need to understand who we are. And so our values determine that, right? We go through life, usually for the first 14 years of life, we start to develop what we understand as our personality, right? Now I'm going to get into lots of detail on that, but the reality is we become who we are. We become the definition of who we are through two things. There's a degree of genetics. That's fairly common in personality, but there's also at least half of that is the environment we're in. And we learn about values and what's important to us from key people in our lives. So for values, they need to be personal. They can't be objective. You can't sit there and say, my value is this, therefore it's black and white. It's got to mean something to you. And that's the reason why I've worked with people in the past and within teams, and the outcome is their values don't sit with what they're trying to achieve. And sometimes they just have to move on. And that's not because of failure. That's not because of anti or negativity. It's because things just don't sit right. And I don't care who you are. If you try and do a job properly without being aligned in your values, you're going to really find it a struggle.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, actually, Paul, because I had a conversation recently with somebody that said, oh, yeah, I've been in the company for X amount of years, a long period of time. Values are these values now, but actually they weren't always those values. The values used to be something else. And so, oh, well, that's, great. Obviously, there's a reason behind why those values changed. They didn't know why. As far as they were concerned, the company just decided to change the values. Again, go back to your point, there must have been a reason, a purpose behind why those values change. But if you are a company that's thinking of changing the values because they no longer align with that mission and vision, then it's important that every single person is communicated the reason behind that change in values.
Yeah, and remember that personal values rarely change, right? When we develop values, we associate so strongly with them. So when a company decides to or looks like they're going to change their value proposition or their values, shall we say, it's really important how that's communicated. If it's simply communicated as we no longer believe in this, we believe in that, that's going to cause a problem because it may sit in opposition to a personal core value, which rarely change in adulthood. So it's really important and we keep coming back to this, Jackie, it's our favorite thing, is to understand why.
Yeah.
When we begin to understand why, we can then see how our personal values, our core values, sit with the company values or the organization values that we work for. It's so important.
Love it. Absolutely loving that thought, Paul. We are nearly running out of time, but I do want to squeeze in one more question. So let's bring this all together. In your opinion, where do you see the future of service excellence?
I have a view on this, as you would be unsurprised to hear, Jackie. I think it's so. Let me set a context. In the world that we live in now, immediate gratification has become the norm, right? We have an expectation of things now. If you order some of your stuff on Amazon, you live in a city, you can have it the same day, right? If you look at history, and let me give an example, perhaps. A soundbite, a political soundbite is how long it takes to make a point politically, right? In the 60s, that took 40 seconds on average. In now, it's 8 seconds. So it's 4 times shorter to make a point. And it's because we consume so quickly. It's because our expectation is so immediate. And that's been driven by our constant access to information. You can look at social media, for example, and it's driven by the fact that companies strive to satisfy you more and quicker than you've ever had before. So when we look at the future of customer excellence, I think we must remember that context. We must remember that as much as our purpose is to have a satisfied customer, and I believe that, by the way, that's a simple statement, but a satisfied customer is someone who buys through emotion. We buy stuff through emotion. We justify that purchase with logic, and then what we do, if we get good customer service, we feel satisfied with that purchase. And that's where we want to be because it's a validation feeling, right? So the future of customer excellence will be about immediacy, will be about flexibility, will be about resolution, because we've come to expect that. That's how society's evolved. And we will need to adapt. We will need to adapt with technology, that dreaded AI word. We will need to adopt technology to support this immediacy of resolution and ownership, right? So the future of customer service excellence for me is always going to be about immediacy. It's going to be about personalization. It's going to be about empathy. That's where we're going to go. The days where it would be press this button to go through here, press that button to go through there, I think those days are coming to an end.
That's an interesting point to close on, Paul. If there's any questions from anybody on anything we've talked about, more than happy to stay on for a couple more minutes to answer anybody's questions. But while people might be thinking about questions and typing away, Paul, would you like to just to let people know that either watching the live session right now or the recording, how they can get in touch with you? Obviously, connect with you would be the first start. But how else can people get in touch with you if they're interested to find out more about the work you do?
Well, you can jump on our website. It's dnaneuroanalytics.com. And just so people know, we call it DNA because we believe that the very core, the very center of people and teams and organizations, it sits there, right? When we believe firmly that the very DNA of an organization is driven by its people. So by all means, on the website, dnaneuroanalytics.com, LinkedIn is by far your best. I'm there. You can find me. If you can't find me, you can find me under Jackie's network. I'm there. So do connect. We are passionate believers, and I've said this at the start, Jackie, that we work in a way that says we want to identify quickly where the challenges or opportunities are, and then we do this in a way that you can measure the progress from there to the outcome you're looking for. That's critically where our standout is. We look for the evidence to support the action we'll take with the client.
Fantastic, Paul. And if anybody is watching this and they're not following Paul right now, please do so, because I find your posts fascinating to read, and I always learn from them, which is why I was so excited to have you on as a guest today, Paul. Thank you ever so much for giving up your time on this Friday. I do hope that you're going to spend some of the rest of the Friday listening to some of your Friday playlist songs that you've chosen.
Oh, yes. And Jackie, thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun and I've loved it.
I've really enjoyed it as well, Paul, and we clearly are on the same wavelength when it comes to service excellence and our passion for it. But thank you, Hubby, for your positive feedback there. And anybody else that's still listening to us, hope you have a fantastic Friday. And do look out for the recording. And if you're watching it on record, then let us know, give us some feedback, let us know your thoughts in terms of how useful you found today's tips. But look out for my next LinkedIn Live in a couple of weeks' time, same place, on a Friday. Thank you ever so much, Paul.
Thanks, Jackie.